for them to have a parent call or have a specific need of a child be brought up to them at the ivory tower. And so we had to work with them some in terms of helping the Department of Education understand their staff had to learn how to deal with parents who were upset. So it was issues like that that came up. But they're all resolvable if you sit down and look at what has to happen to make the transitions work the best.
Thank you. In each of your folders, you guys have question cards. I want to take a short break. We'll come back and rejoin at 9 so people can use the restroom, get some more snacks. But if anyone wants to have a question or a comment, please fill out those little cards and bring them up to me or to Danielle in the back, and we'll have our panel be able to address your questions and concerns when we return at 9. All right, we got a couple of good questions from the audience. The first one that I want to start with is, how is transportation addressed through the tax credit program? And Dave, I'd like you to speak about Missouri here.
As the bill is constructed right now, the scholarships that would be available through the scholarship granting organizations would be allowed to be for an amount that would allow parents to seek out transportation. In other words, the transportation costs would be accounted for when the scholarship granting organization is making its determination as to the amount of the scholarship. One of the things that I need to clarify as far as the program is concerned is that there would be no set limit on the amount of the scholarships. In other words, and that's very important for special needs children, because anyone acquainted with special needs education knows that the financial demands for different students can vary wildly. One student could require tens of thousands of dollars a year for their special needs. Others might not require, even a significant fraction of that amount in order to have their needs met. So it's a very wise thing that the crafters of this bill did in not saying, well, the scholarship has to average this much or it's capped at this much. It allows flexibility for the scholarship granting organizations to meet the needs of each individual child that is applied for the scholarship. But to answer the question again, the bill currently, as written, would allow scholarship granting organizations to take transportation costs into account in granting the scholarship.
The next question is, if there's a private money scholarship fund set up, where will accountability lie for their use of money?
Well, the accountability lies in, it's a twofold layer of accountability. The first is with the parents, and I believe that that question was wonderfully answered earlier, that parents do have a tremendous stake in the welfare of their child, and if they see that their child is not performing or is not improving, then they will pick up and go elsewhere, so that hopefully the child will be able to improve. But the second layer of accountability in this sort of program that's been proposed is that of the contributors. If the contributors do not see results from the program, then they don't have any further incentive to contribute into this program. One of the misconceptions that I've heard about this program is that the contributors obtain a benefit from the program. Well, that's not strictly speaking true. It's the difference between choosing to donate $10 to a charitable organization or choosing to donate $2. In either case, you are diminishing the amount of money that you have to spend on yourself. It's just a question of how much you're diminishing. And in the meantime, you're able to provide an amplified benefit for the sacrifice that you're making. Effectively, the state is saying, we recognize the social value of you reinvesting in your own community, so we are going to lessen the blow to you by saying you get this much of a write-off on your annual tax liability. So it's not that the state is giving anyone any money. It's simply lessening the burden that an individual would bear once they have chosen to make a charitable donation. Does that make sense?
Yes. Dr. Hardman?
The McKay Scholarship does a different thing than the tax credit, but I've got some background in the corporate tax credit in Florida as well. Originally, we did not have enough checks and balances on the groups that were taking the initial money. Now what we have is checks and balances in law that require accounting to a very high level of accounting on how those monies are being spent and how they're being distributed among the different parents. To clarify again, the scholarships, either the corporate tax scholarship, which would be the same type thing that y'all have here, or the McKay scholarship, does not go to the private school. It goes to the parent. But the parent must use it in the private school. They can't go out and just do whatever they want to do with it. But there's a double layer there that the parent actually receives the money, and the school then has to be the depositor of the money. School that has been accepted by the state and meets the criteria. Okay, and the criteria is criteria that, quite honestly, we as the McKay Scholarship Coalition brought to the state and said, you've got to impose some checks and balances here. So there is a way to have the checks and balance, both fiscally, which you need to have, accounting to the state, and since you've got tax donated dollars, the feds probably get involved in that too, and it would not be wise to move on the part of one of these organizations to misuse those funds. So you really have some checks and balances there in accountability fiscally, and then to the parent from the standpoint of educationally or behaviorally what's going on.
Great, and tied, go ahead.
I'd like to follow that. Just to follow up, part of the accountability that's built into the bill that's currently being considered is it caps the amount that any scholarship granting organization can use on non-scholarship expenditures. The bill says that you have to spend 90% of everything that you take in on education scholarships. Now, that 10% is actually a little bit illusory, because in Pennsylvania, where they do have a tax credit scholarship program very similar in structure to the one that's being considered here, they have the same 10% requirement, but routinely the scholarship granting organizations are only actually spending between 5 and 7% on their own administration. So in fact, despite the fact that they could spend more on their own administration, they're still sending 93 to 95% of all the funds they collect directly to the education of the children.
Great. Tied to the accountability